Hey, I want to thank you for listening to today's podcast. I'm not sure how you found us, but I want to let you know that we have made it as easy as possible for you to find, follow, and share this podcast with as many people as possible. All you have to do is type in Community Solutions, and we're in the Apple iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, we're on Spotify, and as usual, you can find it out on YouTube or by going directly to podbabble.com, the great podcast network that we're part of. So go out there and go nuts, because the more that you share this information, the greater opportunity that you have to change your community. So thank you again for listening. Now let's get back to the show.
My hands are tied, the billions shift from side to side, and the wars go on with brainwashed pride for the love of God and our human rights, and all these things are swept aside by bloody hands time can't deny, and we are washed away by your genocide, and history hides the lies of our civil wars. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter, in your face for another week. What's up, buddy?
Nothing. I just have absolutely no idea who that is.
Well, Guns N' Roses.
Really?
Civil War, yeah.
Huh.
One of my personal favorites.
Oh, I thought maybe... I don't know what I thought there.
Yeah?
I just think of Sweet Child of Mine or something like that.
Nobody plays the guitar like Slash, I'm telling you.
Oh.
Well, I mean, there are people that play as well and better, I'm sure, but nobody plays it like he does.
Well, I did get to see one of the things I did get to see I never got, of course, to see Jimi Hendrix, but
yeah.
I did get to see Jimmy Page. I think I mentioned this previously, that when I was in college, I did get to see Page Plant in concerts. That'd be like 98-ish, I want to say, at Target Center. Target Center was a fairly new building then, and so that was a great experience. I was never I'm not the biggest Led Zeppelin fan. But it's hard not to respect how talented they were. And the drummer who passed away, I'll think of his name. Don't tell me.
Okay.
Who was considered one of the best drummers to Bonham, John Bonham.
Yes.
Yeah. So, it was great to see them. And so, I have, anybody who can play the guitar, I just have a certain amount of respect for. I tried.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I tried.
That's what you meant, right, all along.
Of course. I tried to play a guitar, but I can't get my fingers and stuff to think like that. People who are musically talented and creative and can songwrite and write a melody to go with it. I've just got, it's kind of like people who can write a book or something like, I don't know, like yours truly. There's just a certain amount of talent. Not everybody can do it. And it's just an incredible skill, I think, to have that.
You're right. We are self-published authors. I don't know if we've ever mentioned that here on the show, but
I'm not self-published. I do have a publisher.
You have a publisher, but when we do our stuff, it's self-published.
Oh yeah,
so.
We are self-published
as well. Yes.
And we're living at the right time for that, because years ago this couldn't happen.
Right.
At the same time, and we'll get into this later, we're living at the wrong time for some things, too.
Don't you feel sometimes like you were just born in the wrong decade?
Yeah, I think I'd have been a great advisor to Calvin Coolidge, or, I think I'd have been a World War I in the trenches. I would have kicked some arse or something. I do feel kind of... you could drop me into like a period drama on TV, and I think I would do well long time ago.
I would die of boredom.
Well,
I would be the one that passed away of boredom in a period drama.
Well, you got to remember, I mean, people did different things for entertainment, and even in our lifetimes, we've seen a difference between not knowing the baseball scores and then picking it up on our phone and just looking.
Right.
In the 90s, the ticker, ESPN came up with the ticker. And so, I mean, you and I have lived through that.
Yeah.
Whereas, people in their 20s have always had it, and people in their 70s still don't have it.
Right.
So there's an interesting. We're kind of the bridge from. People who were born in the 70s. I mean, you and I aren't that far apart in age. That we've gone through. We grew up in a print era, a broadcast TV channel era. Lived through the revolution of cable in the 80s and 90s, and then the technical advances in the 21st century.
I mean, and we're moving into this place where voice is super important. Now we're just beginning to be in a place where it can be like, hey Siri, what's the Twins score? And we've got it. Pretty soon we're going to be, if Ray Kurzweil has his way, we're going to be able to think, hey, what's the Twins score? And it'll show up on the little contacts in our eye, and then
boy, I got contacts in right now.
They don't work like that, do they?
Don't. Oh. My eye doctor doesn't put the Twin score in my contacts, but
yeah, I tell you, there are times where I wish that my eyes didn't work so well, but they do, and so from time to time I find things,
lucky bastard,
or things are given to us that we are unfortunately forced to read because of our position. There's a guy we know, Garrett Christensen, who's running for Elk River City Council, and he was reporting on something that the current council did. He's not currently on the city council, but he's running for it. So here in this edition of the Local Lowdown, we'd just like to briefly touch on this, and we'll follow this a little bit, I think, as more comes out. But at a recent city council meeting, they voted 5-0 on the city council to approve option 1, which is $35 million for a multi-purpose recreational facility. We're talking ice arena improvements, community meeting activity space, a 30,000 square foot synthetic turf field house, improvements to Lion Park, including Lions Park Center, which is another meeting space. A
lot of gatherings, I guess.
Additional play fields, parking lot improvements, trail improvements, community picnic pavilion edition. Their picnic pavilion is apparently not big enough.
My wife and I were just in Elk River at Orono Lake, and they had plenty of picnic space, and there were ball fields right by the Sherburne County Fair, I believe is what it is over there, and I thought it was a very nice place, very nice beach.
Yes.
And I did not see $35 million in improvements that need to be made.
Well, it's funny that you were at Lake Orono, because that's what they're talking about here is at Lake Orono. That I just listed off is about $26 million in updating. They also want to use $1.5 million to facility improvements for people 55 and over. They want to spend $1 million on Lake Orono dredging, $2 million on other trail improvements. Apparently, $2.5 million on Orono Park improvements.
$2 million on trails?
Yes. Maybe they need like cushier.
You could pave a parking lot for $50,000. Why is it that
they probably don't want it paved? Your joggers will get plantar fasciitis, or
the dirt ain't going to help them either.
Yeah, probably won't.
Get their shoes dirty.
Yeah. Another $2 million then on youth athletic complex improvements for a total of $35 million, and they want to.
What? Let me just throw a question.
Yeah.
To Elk River, youth park improvements, not creating a youth park.
Right, spending $2 million on improvements.
So, what are the improvements that would cost $2 million? Now, look, if you didn't have a youth park and you had to build the fences and the dugouts and the bleachers and dig the dirt and put up a scoreboard or whatever. I mean,
mechanical bull.
Have a concession stand. I mean, that can get spendy. Okay, I mean, it's possible that it could. If you're just creating a park out of nothing,
right?
That can get expensive. If I've got a park and I want to improve it, what in the world would $2 million? What does that entail?
I don't know.
Obviously, we don't know. We're just reporting the Cliff Notes here. But, I mean, $2 million?
Yeah, just on that part. So, yeah, it's $35 million total. And then they want to use the local option sales tax, and they're going to put that on the referendum question on the general election ballot coming up this fall.
So everybody has an opportunity to vote this up or down. So now comes the city's sales pitch, because all of these people are all in on this. I mean, 5-0 tells me that whoever's up for election is, going to be touting all the benefits of this and is not going to highlight any negatives.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, they've been working on this for a long time in their work sessions and their park and rec board.
And it's been part of their master plan. Who the hell knows how long. You know how it works.
Absolutely. And so they're going to sell all these great things that this new park and lake and complex
They'll lay out a bunch of pictures of how great it'll look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they make it sound small. I mean, it's only 0.5%. The sales tax is only going to go up 0.5% a day.
Of course, they don't have in Sherburne County. They don't have the transit taxes and stuff that we have here in Hennepin County.
Right.
I don't think they have the wheelage tax either. That we get the $10 every time you renew your tabs.
No. So they say that this will expire once the project is complete, but we know that taxes rarely do expire, but maybe this will.
Well, one thing
it has to. But
one thing I don't know is, and maybe this is something we can update on in the future. Is once this is paid for, does that mean this tax goes away? Because we've seen other things where you're taxed for something, and then the politicians just spend the tax on something else. Oh, we're going to implement franchise fees for these projects, and those projects are done, and the franchise fees stay.
Right.
So anybody in Elk River who tries to give you this BS that don't worry, the tax is going to leave, I don't buy that for a second. Now, having said that, Elk River voters, you do have the choice. Now, there's also something that worries me, is that if this fails, can they just go ahead and bond the money? And
I don't see why they can't.
Yeah. I mean, there's limits to bonding. The only thing I can think of is that they've got too much bonds outstanding that they can't borrow for it.
That is the one thing that would stop them from doing it that way. I mean, why they did it as a sales tax instead of a bond. Obviously, that's something that's going to need a little more digging to uncover. But either way, I mean, whether it's a bond, whether it's a sales tax, that they are both taxes that you are paying on. A bond, you're not paying just the principal. You pay the interest, and they never tell you what the interest is going to be, by the way.
Not in dollars.
No, they'll tell you 1%.
Yeah, which is used for the sales pitch. 3%, 4%. It's a low bond rate right now. We have to take advantage of these. I mean, you're going to hear that line.
Right. Well, I mean,
it's no different than giving you a credit card offer. And
right.
I mean, what's the difference?
It's like our good friend that we helped retire, Mark Hoffman, once said that I can buy a car for $15,000. I don't remember if he said 15. I'll just use that number. I can buy a car for $15,000, but I don't tell you what it costs with all the interest. I just tell you what I paid for it.
Yeah, right.
Well, no, you are paying the interest over time. That's what these people don't understand.
You paid $19,000 for a $15,000 car.
Yeah.
Or whatever, depending on your credit. But
it's a good deal.
It's like
just
you bought
this park will be a good deal.
You bought that $200,000 house, but you paid $300,000 for it.
Right. Now, that's not to say that this park isn't something that all the residents want, and it's good that it's going to be on the ballot and people can vote on it. I just hope that they understand it fully, because that's what we get pegged with a lot, is we're against parks, we're against street repairs, we're against bike paths, we're for whatever makes your community better in the eyes of your community, not planners who are far away from your community that really don't know what Elk River is about, that don't know what Forest Lake is about, that don't know what Zumbrota is about. We want you to make your own decisions from an informed point of view.
Well, and I would add to that we also understand that local government has some mandates to do.
Yep.
Local governments have charters to follow.
Yep.
If you're a charter city, I mean, that they, just like the Constitution and the Minnesota Constitution, grant government certain responsibilities.
Yes.
At the same time, I think one of the things that's gone on in local government is the priorities are so out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, and we're always threatened with, oh, we're going to have to cut police, or, oh, we're going to have to.
Right.
That's the big part that's always bothered me is it's like, okay, you don't need a regional trail. Maybe it's a nice thing to have. Maybe it's something some cities want and some cities don't. Sidewalks, I mean, if you have a city, like you said, they're willing to pay for it, they're willing to maintain it, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But to have a sidewalk because your neighboring city has it, or
because the state says, hey, we're going to pay for this road, put in a sidewalk.
And I think, again, you're hitting on something that we always get tagged with this we just hate everything. And I think that's
what people say who want to pass things that you don't like.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of these city councils operated under the radar 15 or 20 years ago, and they're getting scrutinized more now. They're getting pressured from lots of places, good and bad, and if you have the wrong people there, you end up spending money on a race equity plan, something I guarantee you that's in nobody's charter to spend money on. And, you end up, Elk River residents really need to scrutinize this $35 million. I mean, I guarantee you they don't spend $35 million in a year in their budget. No. So to scrutinize that number and put these, I mean, it's now that it's on the ballot, it's up to the city to sell it.
They will. They'll have open houses.
They'll have everything they can to sell it, but it's also your opportunity to challenge them.
Right.
And you can't miss that opportunity because, I just feel like if they wanted to bond this, they could have bonded it.
Yeah. And
something tells me that they can't.
Yeah, and that might be the other thing. I mean, if the debt level is so high, they might not be able to bond it.
And I'd like to know, where is their cash? I mean, what are their cash assets? What are their funds? What's their PIR fund?
How much of this could they be paying for out of their park fund?
I mean, their park fund isn't at zero. I promise you that.
Mm-hmm.
They have a CIP fund for capital assets. Where is that at?
Yep.
So it's certainly questionable, and I think residents there, boy, I'll tell you what. You think when you get out of Hennepin County, you're not nailed with things. Huh. You get out of that 7-county metro, you're still nailed with crap like this.
Oh, yeah. So if you guys live in Elk River, we're not telling you to vote for this or vote against it. What we're telling you is to demand of your city councilors to show you where your money is going so that you can determine if this is something you want or not. And Gare Christensen, again, who's running for Elk River City Council, put this out on his website. Certainly, he wouldn't mind if you go back to him and he'd love to talk to you about it, I'm sure, too. And that way you can figure out where he stands on this. And he might have different insight as somebody coming into City Council as someone who's currently there and trying to sell it.
No question.
So, but that is the thing. I mean, these places, these cities, they get these kinds of things from places like the League of Minnesota Cities, who get them from the National League of Cities, who get them from national organizations,
APA,
APA, things like that. But these orders, these policies, they come from somewhere, Andrew. and over time, I mean, we've seen, and this show is it's local in nature, but we're also tackling something today that we're trying to explain to you how these things are getting to you locally.
Well, and also to really understand the motivations behind some of this stuff,
right?
You have to go back to the beginning.
You do. You got to know history in order to understand it.
Right. It's like to understand the Civil War. You don't start in 1860. You start a long time before that.
Yeah.
And when I wrote my book on the Civil War, I started it with the Mexican War.
Right. That's where it should start.
Yeah, I mean that's where a lot of the a lot of the territory we gained from there, along with the annexation of Texas, which was right before that, is what helped widen us sectionally as a nation. And when you talk about, we just did the podcast, The War on Cars, which you can get on our website and all the places you get our podcast.
That's a fun one.
We got a new definition of fun, but it was a fun one. It's always fun to do these things.
Yeah, well, you heard from our friends over at Minneapolis Bike Wrath again in the past day or two, so that's going to be a fun, evolving thing for us.
Yeah, well, little twerps can pound their desk. I don't care what they do, but in this is kind of an expansion of the war on cars in a way.
Yeah,
because so many policies that have come down, Jay, that our local governments are dealing with, whether that's Green Step, whether that's the push for light rail, whether that is the the push for higher density housing, whether that's the war on cars, whether that's biking, all stem from this environmental movement, if you want to call it that.
Yeah,
it all kind of has an origin there. So to understand the forces that have put things like, sustainable development, Agenda 21,
LEED standards,
right? Yeah. Green Building Council. It all has a beginning. And the beginning of modern environmentalism. And I don't mean caring about having clean water or
right.
That's not what I'm talking. I mean environmentalism.
We all want clean water.
Yeah, and clean air. I'm talking about environmentalism as a political movement.
Yes. Some would argue, I think, almost a religious movement.
I would, and I'm going to get into my thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Because I think that is one of their goals. To get rid of Christianity is pretty much a stated goal.
Right.
Of some of our favorite people. Because here's the thing that's a shock, I think, to you people who are in environmentalism is a religion, because I do think it's a religion. I think when you talk to people who are militant environmentalists, it's kind of like talking, and I don't mean this as a disrespect to anybody's religion, but it's kind of like that person who's found God.
Yes.
And they just want to sit in the shower and sing and I don't mean somebody who goes to church every Sunday. I mean somebody who's militantly into it. And you just can't get anything through to their heads. No offense on them, but you just can't. It's that single-minded, I believe in this and I ain't listening to anybody and I'm right and you're wrong and you're going to hell if you blah, 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 blah. Whatever. You got freedom of religion in this country. You can believe what you want. Environmentalists work very much the same way. If I walked up to a militant environmentalist and I could give them conclusive proof beyond any shadow of a doubt that the earth has not warmed over any length of time, and that's the facts, the earth really hasn't. I mean, it's sort of
been ups and downs.
But there always have been
right
throughout. Having ups and downs is not evidence that human beings are causing
it's cyclical.
The temperature to rise. It is. I mean, we've had cooling periods. We had an ice age. We had a warming period where the dinosaurs died off. I don't think that was due to my driving to work and back. So we've had droughts. We've had torrential. We've had terrible winters, light winters. But if you could present them with absolute proof, they still wouldn't believe it.
No, I mean, they're talking right now about, this heat wave this summer. Well, you weren't talking about how cold it was last winter.
Yeah, you weren't
everywhere on the globe.
You weren't talking about the snowstorm we got in the middle of April that I had to go dig my wife's car out at work.
Yeah, or the expansion of ice in the Arctic right now as well.
It's expanding, not melting. That's a total myth. But again, so we're talking about the origins of this. Where did it start as a political movement? And what has evolved from that sense? Well, it started with oh, surprise, surprise. Of course, we did our podcast on foundations.
Yes.
It started with a bunch of wealthy, kind of like the Bilderbergs, the political elite.
Except much less shadowy. I mean, we know more about this.
Yes, we do.
There are provable facts.
Right. This is right.
Yeah. Hasn't been shrouded in mystery. It's right there.
Yeah, we're not standing with signs outside a place and calling them all crooks and blah, blah, blah. Not that that would be wrong.
No.
But freedom of speech. But it started in 1968. And this is the birth of modern environmentalism with a group called the Club of Rome.
Mm-hmm.
Rome as in R-O-M-E.
Yes.
Okay. And the purpose of this, and I'm going to use their own words, okay? So this is not...
No, they do have a website, clubofrome.org.
Right, and they some of their founders wrote a book called Limits of Growth, which is also where modern environmentalism gets a lot of its Bible from. And that was written by different people than what founded this. But it was founded by some wealthy people that we've heard of, and maybe you haven't heard of.
Right.
The only real quote-unquote scientist who was there was a man named Alexander King. He is often called the father of sustainable development.
Right.
He sort of, whether he coined the term or not, I don't know. I think he was a marginal scientist. That's just my guess. Mm-hmm. He clearly had a political agenda, and a scientist with an agenda is somebody to watch out for.
Yes.
Also, now I can't pronounce this guy's name. The guy from Fiat.
From Fiat, is that Aurelio Peche?
Yeah, I think that was an Italian dish I had a couple weeks ago. But yes, he was an Italian. He was actually a POW.
Yeah.
He was an anti-fascist, and he was jailed. He was tortured, perhaps, by Mussolini's government. So he survived the World War II there. So kudos for that. But this guy was a gazillionaire. Okay. The third founding member, one of those families we all love.
Oh, yes.
David Rockefeller, who would be John Rockefeller's grandson from Standard Oil. Nelson Rockefeller's brother, the governor of New York, the former vice president, and the uncle of Jay Rockefeller, the former senator from West Virginia. We've all heard the term Rockefeller Republican, basically a Republican that supports Democratic stuff. Okay. David Rockefeller would fit that bill, as would his brother. So, and I mean, David Rockefeller's worth billions. I mean, untold amount of money. I mean, John Rockefeller, who has any idea what he made in his lifetime? There was no income tax for most of his years. I mean, what he made was a guess.
I mean, he has a whole center named after him in New York, one of the greatest cities. Well,
him and Andrew Carnegie both have Carnegie Hall in New York. Now, the purpose of this, and the reason it's the birth of the environmental religion or movement, is that their goal in meeting here was to, quote, unite the world in a cause. The world was too divided. We're mired in the Vietnam War. We've got the Cold War. The world needs something to rally everyone. What can we do to rally everyone to the same thing? I mean, what can we do, Jay? I mean, what's going to get everybody to all be on the same side?
Global government.
That's the end game.
Oh,
but that's not. These globalists never say that they're for global government. They're smart enough not to do that.
They kind of do now.
Yeah, they didn't in 1968.
No, they didn't in 1968, but they do now. In fact, we'll get into that.
Yeah, I don't want to hear those quotes yet. But I'm going to quote the Club of Rome here into what they came up with as their way to unite the world. Quote, "The common enemy of humanity is man.
Mm-hmm.
In searching for a new enemy to unite us. Now, look at the language. In searching for a new enemy. So it's not like, Hitler takes over Germany and becomes an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're looking for...
Right.
I always say this. To gain power, government needs a crisis.
Yes.
The Reichstag burns, and that's the crisis that brings in Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There's always a school shooting happens, and that's the catalyst for a gun law.
I mean, right or wrong, the bombing of Pearl Harbor is what brought us into World War II.
Very true. 9/11 is what brought us the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
How did the Patriot Act get written in 2 days and get passed at 3:00 in the morning? I bet it was in somebody's dresser.
I bet it was. Note to our listeners, we're not saying it was staged.
No, I'm not. I'm saying
but
there were
elements.
waiting. There were elements that wanted that to happen. And
they
we're
war gamed it out.
Looking for
looking for
an and Council on Foreign Relations, which of course David Rockefeller was a member of as
Absolutely.
well. One of the things they do is play out crises. If this happens, what will happen? If we have a new Pearl Harbor, what will the response be?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that means it's a conspiracy. I'm just saying the plans are there. We have plans to invade Canada, okay, if it ever happens. Doesn't mean we're doing anything to cause it.
I saw that in a John Candy movie once.
No, I saw it in an episode of Family Ties. So let me get back to this quote.
Okay.
In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea. They didn't come up with any facts. This is happening.
Right.
We came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill.
Wait, what year was this?
1968.
And they were talking about global warming in 68.
Yes.
Before they were talking about the global cooling in the 70s.
No, the global cooling in the 70s came out afterward, not from these people, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but
Time magazine
that's
put
what
that
I mean.
on their cover. Yeah.
But that's what I mean. They were talking about global warming, and then there was global cooling, and then they were talking about global warming.
Right.
Again.
I mean, this is, again...
Just checking.
In their own words, they're manufacturing something.
Right.
All of these dangers are caused by human intervention. Really? Is that really true? Can't a famine just... Can't you have a bad drought or a dust bowl?
Yeah.
Did human beings cause... Okay, collectivization in the Soviet Union, that caused the famine.
Yeah.
But that was not global warming. That was not pollution. That was a nutcase running the country. Okay? And it is only through changed attitudes and behaviors, that they can be overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself. Then we have one of our friends here from the UN UNEP,
Ooh.
Maurice Strong. You might remember Maurice Strong from Canada.
We've talked about him on a previous podcast.
I think he has a lot of ties to Ickley. He has a lot of ties to places like that. He might have been the first chairman of that. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think Strong Cities or something like that.
Yeah, he's since passed away, but he's all over that stuff.
Yeah.
Listen to this quote from him. Isn't the only hope for the planet that the industrialized civilizations collapse? Isn't it our responsibility to bring that about? Now, what's the code language there? The code language is the enemy is capitalism.
Yep.
The enemy, you got too much freedom. You can't have all this freedom. See, this is part of the war on cars. You can't have this freedom. We got to put you into public transit. You can't live in a rural area. You got to drive everywhere.
Right.
This is, again, you can't use that kind of light bulb. We have to tell you what you can use. It's the elites telling the peasants what to do to keep the elites in power.
Yep.
Now, the Club of Rome also, they published this limits to growth. Okay, which and I don't want to. It's laborious. They use outdated computer stuff from way back then. They've basically been proven wrong. Okay, they made predictions that we'd be out of natural resources by certain dates that have been completely wrong. But basically, it is to sound the alarm that we're using too much oil, we're using too many trees, we're using too many natural resources, and they're not going to be around forever. So we need to make changes happen. And it's no coincidence that in the 70s, you had the oil shortage, you had the electric car fad that came and went, you had the EPA be created here. Limits to Growth also is probably the first book that talked about limiting the population, or the population is getting... coincident,
or as they call it, it's the viability of continued growth in the human ecological footprint.
Coincidence Roe v. Wade happened soon after this, maybe?
Yes, 1 year after this. 1972 is when they started publishing this.
And January of 73 was when Roe v. Wade was decided. And people who want to control the population are huge abortion supporters. And the Club of Rome also had more sinister things behind it. Global government being one. I think wanting a godless world is also, because if you believe something, let me get your take on this, Jay. If you believe that there's something beyond this earth, as I do, and I know you do too, and if you believe in an afterlife, okay, then you believe in something greater than the earth we live in. Okay.
Yes.
If you don't believe that, this is your God.
Yeah.
Your God, by definition,
is yourself usually.
Yes, and the earth. I mean, your God.
Could be the earth. It could be you.
Your world doesn't go beyond where we are.
Yeah.
So, in a way, edging at religion is another way to push this. And removing God, getting into academia, and creating world citizens.
Right. Well, I mean, you have to remove God out of the equation, because you're not going to be able to set up a eugenics program.
If there's a sense of right and wrong.
Right, exactly.
Abortion. You're not going to be able to have abortion upon demand if people believe that killing an unborn child is immoral.
You're not going to be able to implement socialism and take from the people that have and give it to the people that have not, if you don't have an amoral, at best, society.
Right. No question about it. So, I do think, UNESCO was created not long after this, which is another arm that's pushed a lot of these ideas. And so out of this grew and grew and grew and grew. But my point is, this was never about science. This was about, okay, how can we create it? How can we change people? And the way you change people is to manufacture a crisis.
Yes.
And that's exactly what they did here. It's no more complicated than that.
Right.
So, you want to talk about where the stuff that we talk about began. You can trace it back to a place like this. You can place it back to people like David Rockefeller created the Trilateral Commission, which is another one of these world, Asia, North American, European coalition to do all this stuff. A lot of the origins of Agenda 21 came from this.
Sure did.
I mean, because, again, remember, the theory is that human beings are the problem.
Yes.
And so we have to control human beings in order to fix it. And if you look at anything we're doing, again, go through Green Step, and you'll find one after another of ways that people can be controlled, can be their freedoms can be limited, and it's all done step by step. It's getting paper cut to death.
Yes.
If they announced in 1968 we're going to have world government, people would have gone crazy about it. After 50 years of having stuff beaten into your head, and 3/4 of the people from 1968 or not 3/4, but a lot of them have died off and so on and so forth. You get a different lexicon out there.
People say, oh, that's just crazy Uncle Eddie. He's been saying that, he's going to take over the world for the last 30 years. He's kind of a nutcase, but crazy Uncle Eddie behind the scenes the whole time has been just quietly, slowly putting his plan into place, and disseminating it through various groups. Now, I'm not saying this is the mastermind group behind everything, but this is where a lot of this originated from, and now we've got all of these groups worldwide that are doing this kind of thing, whether it be climate change, whether it be about eugenics, whether it be about global governance. All of these things kind of come together under the same. But
think about how much of this is not questioned by anybody. I mean, you've got people with political power who, I wonder if they've done any critical thinking on this. I mean, if I showed Club of Rome's quotes to, a politician, they're probably going to turn it around on me as I'm just some sort of loon. And, oh, no, we're not, that's crazy that, such and such would ever happen, or they didn't manufacture anything. They're scientists. That the people who wrote Limits of Growth were different than the people who originated this group. But they're all scientists. They're all accredited people and blah blah blah. And who the hell are you to tell them that they're wrong about something? And my answer to that is, if we had a real crisis, we have something called our government here in our Constitution that has a process in how we deal with such things.
Yes.
We don't have an NGO over in Europe create a group that creates a foundation that sends material to a 501c3 that sends material to a city administrator.
Right. But these guys, I mean, they have headquartered in Europe. It's moved around a few times. France, Germany, Switzerland, wherever. They have 34 national organizations. They're in 33 countries and Puerto Rico, separately from the United States. The United States does have a chapter, as does Russia, as does...
For the Club of Rome?
Yes.
They've got a chapter here in the United States.
They sure do. And it's even based in Texas, believe it or not.
Oh, it's not at Rockefeller Center? It must be in Austin.
No, it's in Houston.
Oh, okay. That would have been my second guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the U.S. Association for the Club of Rome, which you can find at usacor.org. That's usacor.org, as in Club of Rome, C-O-R. So, yeah, and they say right here on their website that... our mission is to encourage both thinking and action toward a sustainable Earth. In so doing, we recognize that all phenomena and problems are interrelated. Based on research, investigation, experience, and innovation from within our group, as well as from around the world, we will present findings to leaders, governments, civil society, and the general public in hopes of creating paradigm shifts that will promote altering actions and policies toward the planet, as well as sustainability of life on Earth. In our individual work, lives, and writings, we will enact these insights into a better future for the human race.
Yeah. Well, you'd be glad to know they do have a membership.
Yes, they do.
Of their members. Not a shock to see some of these people. I wanted to say Dennis and Danella Meadows. They are the main authors of Limits for Growth. Danella has since passed away. Dennis is still alive. He is from the University of New Hampshire. Mostly a director of policy and social science. Not necessarily. I don't know if he is he's considered more of a professor than a scientist. Mikhail Gorbachev is a member.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting?
Everybody loves Mikhail Gorbachev.
Sure. George P. Mitchell, another, not the former senator, but the guy who was he was in oil and gas in Texas back in the 70s and 80s. I can't remember. He's since passed away as well, but he was just a gigantic billionaire with, I'm sure he was giving money away to avoid paying taxes, things like that. So there's all these billionaires who've got together and use their wealth to spread their kind of like we talked about the foundations that they're using this. They don't know any boundaries. They don't know any laws. They don't know any limits to their power. But it's largely just using this to further their own agendas personally.
Yes.
Another member, Hans-Peter Dürr, from Germany.
Okay.
He's the guy that was behind the World Peace Initiative to counteract the Strategic Defense Initiative back in the 80s. All to achieve social justice and peace, as well as solve environmental problems. He's also since passed away. He was on the board of directors of Greenpeace. He was worked for the UN Secretary General as well. So another one of these internationalists, a founding counselor to the World Future Council, which is another one of these renewable energy type deals or whatever. Again, the same thing, the political goals, using the environment to attain political power or get political goals. And I think ultimate goals here are the destruction of capitalism and world government. I mean, that's ultimately where we're headed.
Well, going back
Am I crazy or am I crazy?
Well, let's take them at their word. Let's go back to usacorps.org on their About page, where they say our interests are globalization and global governance.
Oh.
That's their top interest. The protection of the environment and economic sustainability, peace building and conflict resolution, the second UN decade of potable water, gender equality and protection of women and children from abuse, prevention of terrorism and illegal substances within the American hemisphere, and the future of the American hemisphere.
American hemisphere? Why is that their focus?
Is that, I suppose they mean the whole Western hemisphere, South America, North America.
I think their target's the United States, personally.
Well, I mean, we pose the biggest threat. South America has a number of socialist countries already.
Right, that are systematically falling apart.
Yeah.
We have socialist countries here called California.
Yes.
I mean, you want to know the future of socialism, take California. Mm-hmm. You have a state that has its ruling elite, the political class, Hollywood, Malibu, their yuppie cities.
Yep.
And you have everybody else who are the peasants.
Yeah. I mean, homelessness is so prevalent in California. They're everywhere, and they don't do anything about it.
But, Jay, that doesn't make sense. If you listen to the left, California should be utopia.
Should be.
And the gap between the rich and the poor is wider in California than it is anywhere.
The cost of living is super high. The cost of gasoline, the taxes alone on gasoline, you're not going to find gasoline more expensive anywhere in the country than you find it in California.
I agree.
The cost
Even
of
Chicago.
Food, the cost of rent, the cost of a mortgage. I mean, I remember this was, it would have been 12 years ago. Going to California, and when I was in Santa Barbara, I picked up a real estate magazine, and I'm like, oh, that house is about the size of mine, and it's $900,000, and my house has a basement, and this one doesn't. So actually, my house is bigger.
How about a round of golf? What does that cost in California?
Oh.
You've got water shortages.
Yeah.
California should be... You got all the environmental protection. You got all the gender equality. You got everything out there.
Sanctuary cities. It's all happening.
Right, but why isn't that utopia?
Because lawlessness cannot bring about utopia.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the other thing. Last week we were accused of not liking any laws. No, you need to have the right amount of laws to provide structure, but not so that it is an infringement on liberty, you know? And that's California is just a free-for-all, and because of that, I mean, yes, they have laws out there. It's not an anarchist state by any means, but
no.
But what they have chosen to promote, they have used laws to bully people. You know, they've used bullying to enforce non-bullying.
They've used laws to gerrymander the entire state so that everybody in their assembly is there for life.
I'm telling you, outside of Los Angeles, not counting Orange County, everybody else in Los Angeles and San Francisco area, that's a fairly red state.
This is true. Even San Diego is a pretty. I mean, it's at least purple at
worst.
The most. Yeah, if you look at the land mass, it's as red as Texas.
Yeah.
If you look at the concentration of people in power, and that's what I don't understand. What goes on out there? How can you be a poor person in California and continue down the road that you're on? I don't know how that's possible.
It's not working out for you, so you keep voting for the same people. I don't understand it.
I'll never get it. I'll never understand California. But my fear
here.
Yeah, I mean it's happening in Minnesota to a less extent. But New York is going that way, where upstate New York and western New York and New York City are two different countries right now. I mean, you've seen it even in states like Texas. You have the Austin, Houston area, and you've got the rest of the state. You've got, it's like there's an elite ruling class in the capital and the largest cities of a state, and then there's everybody else.
Yeah, and that's why nationally they want to bring things into, the national popular vote, because they know that the population centers can rule it all.
Right, they'll rule everything. They'll completely rule I mean, why would somebody campaign? And it really bothers me too when people talk about the popular vote in the Trump-Hillary election, because if the popular vote were the thing, President Trump would have campaigned completely differently than he did.
Right.
It isn't fair to say that he lost it. No, because he spent all of his last 2 weeks in Wisconsin and Iowa and Michigan and trying to get that last 2% that Mitt Romney didn't get. Ohio, and he spent all his time in 6 states. Now, if the popular vote were the thing, he'd have spent the last 2 weeks in California, Texas, New York, and Illinois.
Right.
So it's not fair to say that. But yeah, national popular vote, so that the big cities, the 20 biggest cities in the country will control. It's no different than the Soviet Union. That's St. Petersburg, Moscow, Stalingrad, and Kiev, and pick your other cities there, controlling this massive country.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're not getting off subject here. I mean, it seems like we are, but we're not, because, again, this is the end game here. What you read on their website, they're openly stating what they want to do is just basically overthrow our Constitution.
Yes.
And their groups are working here. Their groups are influencing your local government, your state government, your county government, your school districts.
Absolutely. I'll guarantee that.
Getting into the heads of the young people is what really concerns me. I mean, when I hear the term global citizen, okay,
yeah,
that is where it's like, no, Jay, you and I aren't Americans anymore. No, we're citizens of the world. And we got to do our part. These people are also. I'll tell you another disaster. Look at the continent of Africa. if the people there got all the money that has been thrown at those nations, they'd all be millionaires.
Yeah.
But who has the power in Africa? The military people, the dictators, the ruling elite. And we've turned Africa into California. We've turned it into a continent of welfare people who don't have the means, don't have the opportunity to grow and fend for themselves. You mentioned you were in Haiti, right? Where you told the story about, I don't remember what episode that was, about people who really had no hope and really had no opportunity.
Absolutely.
What did that look like,
Right. Well, and I guess I didn't follow up on that, but I heard that recently they had like a political uprising because people are still hurting from the earthquake that happened 8 years ago.
Unbelievable. Look what's going on in Puerto Rico, where they can't get the damn lights on after 6 months or a year or whatever it's been.
Yeah.
The social and political elite, okay, are, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a nut. Their goal is world control by any means necessary.
Yes.
That sounds kind of wacky. I think part of people don't want to believe that. They don't want to believe that, our government is a sellout. They don't want to believe that the people who have achieved greatness through our capitalistic system are going around the world trying to destroy capitalism everywhere else. They don't want to believe that the remnants of the Soviet Union, like Mikhail Gorbachev, are joining groups right now to try to push policy in the United States.
Right.
They don't know. Gorbachev's probably 90 years old by now, but he probably is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's true. He was a counterpart of Reagan, so it's probably true.
Probably, and he either has I don't know if it's Asia or Russia now on his forehead, but whatever, it doesn't matter. I just had to get. I think of The Naked Gun where he Leslie Nielsen wiped it off. But I think people are reluctant to believe that. And I always find that fascinating. How can somebody be reluctant to believe that? We just went through the 20th century where we had genocides, we had world wars, we had the Holocaust, we had what happened in the Soviet Union. Look what human beings did to each other. Why is it so crazy to believe that human beings wouldn't create atomic bombs?
Yeah.
And I'm crazy for believing that a small group of people would get together and try to rule the rest of us. Why is it so crazy?
It's not. Money and power corrupt, and that's always happened since the beginning of time. And
power mostly.
Yeah. Yeah, money makes you more of who you are. It's just if you're a bad person already, it gives you the means to be able to do more with it.
Yeah.
If power is your goal.
I agree, but I think making money is not the root of evil.
Oh, no, it's the love of money is the root of all evil. And it, if you're not in love with it, you're generous. You do things with it that are good.
Yes, you're Andrew Carnegie with your money.
Yeah.
Not David Rockefeller.
Right.
Big difference. I think, too, that and people who don't want to believe that the American government can be complicit in this, I present to you Operation Northwoods. I present to you Operation Paperclip. Go look them up, and you'll see what your government's capable of. And again, that's something people don't want to believe. They just don't want to believe it.
Right.
So how do you get people? How do you get people who are legitimately concerned? Maybe people are legitimately concerned about the environment. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting clean air, clean water. There's nothing wrong with wanting a car that gets better mileage. No. There's nothing wrong with not littering or doing things like that. Where's the line between the concern for that and this concern to try to remake the world?
Well, and that's the thing. And we've got these people that are making a concerted effort to get into government. And they get their policies into local government, they get people into local government, and then bring them up through the ranks to the state level and the federal level. Now, they have not had a lot of luck across the United States with that effort. You know, we have seen where there has been a conservative shift in state and federal level politics for the most part. Obviously, you always have your Californias, your New England states that don't move. But across the country, you have seen a shift in that direction.
And you've seen shifts of it in other places, too, like England with Brexit and with a handful of other countries that are finally getting around to going, oh, gee, maybe this isn't the future we really want.
Right. So I don't know. So you've got that happening, but at the same time, at the local level, you've got these people getting in and kind of subverting what our American ideals are. And because we don't have the ability to follow that as well at the local level, they can kind of make things happen. And it's not just the people who are getting elected. It's the city staff that are listening to the American Planning Association, that are listening to the League of Minnesota Cities, that are listening to
the 501c3s and so on and so forth. I mean, but you talk about American ideals.
Yeah.
And that's where I really get worried. A person who's 70 and a person who's our age, our American ideals are one thing. What do you think the American ideals are of a person who's, say, 21? Now, this we're not the first generation to say this, Jay.
Right.
I know we're not.
No.
I'm sure if you had kids in the 60s, you were wondering if America would survive another 10 years. Okay, got it. But I think that there was not, at that time, this internationalist stuff, this stuff that's been accepted as fact. I agree with you that there has been a backlash against that, but I still think that there's so far to go with just getting. Look, I mean, I've been involved for 16 years now. Okay. I didn't even hear of something like Agenda 21 till about 2009.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, for me, it was a little early.
Yeah, but I mean,
I
didn't
heard about 2006.
I wouldn't have made connections between the EPA and, so on and so. I would have never connected all of this. Not saying it's all a web and somebody's, puppeting everything. But I mean, and I feel like we have a younger generation that is just so impressionable and wants instant gratification. Everything is just kind of, they don't like to read. They don't like to, I mean, it just, I'm concerned that they're never going to grow up in a world, they're going to grow up in a world that they think human beings are the enemy.
Yeah.
We have politicians who feed into that. Get you to hate your boss, hate your, pick your enemy, hate Wall Street, hate that banker.
But
you're getting screwed by everybody.
But they do it in the context of love, and anyone who exists outside of these acceptable social norms that they've created, those are the people that are wrong, and it's okay to hate them because we have this bubble of love in the middle. And we welcome people into this bubble of love. But those people who won't come in, they need to be ostracized. They need to be shut down. They need to be shouted down. And, they need to realize they're wrong.
Well,
right.
But I mean, I just, growing up in a world where the Cold War was still very real, which is the world you and I grew up in, and a general optimistic outlook. I've always had an optimistic outlook, but
me too. Yeah.
It has diminished. It's gone up and down recently, but I wonder if we've reached a point where I mean, you look at a state like California, and I think, what can turn it around? The country,
really big tidal wave.
It's like the state has to collapse under its own weight. And how many people are going to get hurt by that happening, too?
Exactly. And that's the sad part. I mean, the fact that California does have so many homeless people, and they're hurting, and there's nothing being done for them. This supposedly generous state that just, we love you, we love everybody, well, except our homeless, except for the people that work hard and pay taxes.
Right, they're not welcome in California,
and so that's kind of what you end up with, unfortunately.
Well, and I mean, let the mass exodus begin. I mean, we've already seen people leave California. I'll throw you another example. Look at the electoral vote. Back in, I think it was 1988, I'll use the Bush-Dukakis race. And I might not have these numbers right, but I'm paraphrasing. I think New York had 36 electoral votes and Texas had 27.
Okay.
And I think in the 2016, I think New York had 29 and Texas had 38.
Wow.
So look at the people voting with their feet. Look at Florida, how that state has
grown.
I mean, it's still growing. I mean, it's not just retired people. I mean, there's an element of that. There's an element of people who moved there for the weather. There's an element of people who live there half the year. But you look at a state like that, and that is, I mean, they like having no income tax, boy. They
sure do.
I mean, they're not flocking to New York. They're not flocking to Illinois. They're not flocking to Massachusetts.
No.
So, I mean, are people voting with their feet now? I mean, are they just saying, hey, you're going to tax me right out of the state?
I think that happens, and I think with business owners that happens quite a bit.
So how does that spell get broken? Because if the taxpayers and the business owners and so on and so forth leave a state, who's left to pay for the people not working or retired or whatever else on the public union dole? I mean, it's a shrinking amount.
It is
that is in those states.
It is, and unfortunately, when you have this move like the Club of Rome, the stuff that they're putting out there, the stuff that a lot of these other groups are putting out there.
Right, socialism. Let's just call it what it is.
It is. It's socialism. Whether that's those guys or the Fabian socialists over in England or any of that, you do have people that I think vote with their feet. They move elsewhere where it's a little more comfortable for them. I think that over the long haul, I mean, it's no secret. I mean, Minnesota again is in danger of losing a congressional district.
Right.
Supposedly we're a really good place to start a business, but yet people keep moving out.
Well, you look at the list of Fortune 500 companies we've lost in the last 10 years.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's significant. I mean, we still have some. 3M, Target, Best Buy. I mean, there are some, but I mean, ultimately, I mean, you keep down this path, and everybody's headquarters is going to be in Texas or Kentucky or Arkansas or Idaho. I don't know where it's going to be, but it's going to be a place where they're not going to be punished for being a success, because I remember, every nickel that you go and tax out of a business is $1 that they can't hire somebody with, $1 they can't give in a raise, $1 they can't spend on their employees' health care or vacation time. Yeah, you think you're punishing the evil millionaire. Evil millionaire is not taking a pay cut.
No.
They're going to make up that loss. So where's that loss going to come? It comes from all of us.
Yeah, it does. That's when you see layoffs of middle management. That's when you see layoffs of customer service people.
And layoffs are usually the last thing that happens.
Right.
It's kind of like hiring is the last thing. They're both lagging indicators.
Right.
They won't hire somebody until they're sure they can keep them. They don't want to lay people off unless they absolutely have to. So there's kind of that's part of that cycle. That's not always reflective of economic conditions. Well, look, we covered a lot right there. I mean, we went on and on and on. Good discussion, I think. Club of Rome.
Yes.
Look it up. Limits of growth. Familiarize yourself with it. No coincidence that after 1968, EPA, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, all the policies back in the 70s, War on Cars, Agenda 21, Sustainable Development, Earth Summit, all grew out of one place. That's where the seed was planted and the water was put on there, and it was not a nice, beautiful green plant that came out of it, though.
No. So what can you do? I mean, again, we're a solutions-based show. What can you do about some club far away in whether it's headquartered in Europe or the local chapter that's somewhere in Houston, and good luck getting in on that. There is one thing that you can do, and we have stated this from the beginning, whether it's the Club of Rome or whether it is all of these other smaller groups, these foundations that throw millions upon millions of dollars at problems that they're not real problems. They're problems they've created. Let's be honest about that. But how do you stop those from getting into your community? There's only one way, and that's by getting involved. That's by you stepping up into advisory commissions. That's you running for office, whether that's mayor, whether that's city council, school board, county commission, soil and water conservation, whether that's getting appointed to a watershed commission or some sort of joint powers advisory board. There are so many options out there for you. We figure there are 30,000 here in Minnesota, and we want to find 20,000 of you that are willing across this state to sit in those seats and govern from a sense of not allowing this stuff in. From being able to stand there and say, we don't need your free money, we don't need your regulation, we don't need your persuasion. We understand from a common sense perspective what to do in this state because we live here and because we love our state and we want to make it the best it can be. We don't want to make it some liberal utopia. So how do you do that? You can email us, commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That's commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. And if you got other stories like the Local Lowdown at the beginning, go ahead and send them to us. We'd love to talk about them on the podcast or blog about them. And so you can pass this information on to your friends and neighbors in the community and keep them aware of everything that's going on. We do this podcast for you because we love you guys. And we believe in your ability to change this state around. Yes, it is true. We love you, Minnesota. Now it's your turn to get to work.
If I get too caught up in my